for live. 10 days into Operation Rising Lion. It was 10 days ago that I was in Israel, standing at the Western Wall, together with Prime Minister Netanyahu and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and Argentinian President Javier Milei, when Prime Minister Netanyahu, wrapped in a talit, in a prayer shawl, approached the wall. I was standing several feet away from him, placed a note in the wall and said his prayers. Later we discovered the note basically stated the name of the operation that would take place a few hours later. This was Thursday evening. Early Friday morning, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion. The verse in the book of Numbers, where the archenemy of the Jewish people, Balaam, the prophet, who wanted to curse the Jews, ended up blessing them. And the blessing was, behold, a nation that will rise like a lion, like a lioness, and will be exalted like a lion. In the Hebrew, Hein Kilovi Yakum Ukari Nasa. And that's the note that Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu placed into the wall. Today, 10 days later, Prime Minister Netanyahu returned to the wall, again wrapped in a talit, and broadcast a video message saying, I was standing here 10 days ago, and I placed that note stating a nation that will rise like a lion. And now I'm putting a note that says a nation that has risen like a lion. And indeed, the last 10 days, we've seen the entire world stands in awe, witnessing how a small little nation called the land of Israel, with a people that is the fewest among nations, just 14.5 million strong, has risen like a lion against an enemy, not just of the Jewish people, enemy of the world, threatening the world with nuclear holocaust. And in miraculous fashion, have literally obliterated the enemy, not complete yet, and we still need prayers, and our prayers go out to all the innocent men, women, and children in the Holy Land, to the soldiers and military protecting them, and to all people in the world. And everyone is standing in awe. It was until last night when President Trump of the United States launched an attack as well to help support this effort, to try to eliminate all the nuclear arsenals and development of the Iranians in search of these destructive weapons. What we've seen in the last 10 days is hard to describe. No one would have imagined it. As someone told me, not a real lover of Israel or Jews, that since World War II, we have not seen a display of strategy, all in order to preserve and fight for a moral cause. This is not an offensive attack on some sovereign nation. It's protection against their threats, calling for the destruction, death to Israel, death to America. And just a few short days, Israel has demonstrated control of the air, of the entire airspace over Iran. Yes, missiles are still coming into Israel, and hopefully that will end very quickly. And as I said, the world owes a tremendous debt of gratitude to Israel, who's standing on the front lines. You would think that the entire world would get united behind them and say, this is a threat, an existential threat to us all. No, they're watching on the sidelines. History is always the best prosecutor of how people behaved in a time like this. But the United States, to its credit, has helped Israel and continues to help. Why is this a historic time? Because this period in time is demonstrating something, that this space, this geography has been ravaged by centuries, if not millennia, of battles and wars. We're talking about the Mesopotamian region that goes back to biblical times, the the battles fought back then. We're talking about the empires of Persia, the empire of Babylon, the Greek empires, finally the Roman Empire, all battling in this region. And we're literally talking about Persia. Iran was renamed in the 20th century to Iran, but it was always called Persia. And Persia in the Bible and in many books, including the book of Esther, is documented of being a superpower. That yes, at some point, the story of Purim, 2,500 years ago, more than 2,500 years ago, was also called for the entire annihilation of the entire Jewish people. And then, of course, we had the miracle where everything turned around. And it actually turned around during these days of the year, on the Hebrew month of Sivan, the 23rd of Sivan, which was last Thursday. And we're literally seeing a repeat of these events and the miracles as well. When you go deeper into the mystical teachings and writings and the Talmudic prophecies, and biblical prophecies, I should say, and the Talmudic interpretations, you find Persia as a central character. And I just want to quote two sources. One from a Talmud, the Talmud in the tractate called Avodah Zarah, 2b, talks about how the two nations that will last to the end of time before the Messianic age will be the Roman Empire and will be the Persian Empire. Now we know it's not the old Roman Empire, but Rome of old evolved into what we call the Western Christian civilization, which includes most of the countries of the West. The Persian Empire evolved into what we'd call the Arab Muslim civilizations. Most of the countries, if not all of the countries that are now Arab Muslim. At the center of them is Iran and Persia. And it says that at the end of these days, meaning close to the time that we are right now, there will be battles fought. It says a king of Persia will stand up and threaten the world, and people will be afraid, and God will say, don't be afraid. I do this all because of you. He tells this to the Jewish people, by extension to the world, because the time of your redemption has come. In the Talmud, it discusses that at the end of the time, the Roman Empire, and that means the Western world, will conquer and will defend itself against the Persian aggression. So literally these events are playing themselves out now in real time. I intend obviously to talk about this more in detail as we go. So we have to look at the bigger picture while we also see the immediate one. There's historic proportions that are taking place, a true paradigm shift, a new world order. And even on a very basic level, think what happens when you can eliminate these weapons of destruction and these threats. What will happen to the Middle East? The very likely conclusion will be peace. Peace, yes, with Persia, with Iran, peace with Saudi Arabia, peace with Lebanon, peace with Syria. And all this was unimaginable just a year ago, just weeks ago, as a matter of fact. So the number one message is that we have to understand that we're living through history. That we're always living through history, but there are times, there are junctures that are really a crossroad, a watershed moment that ushers in a completely new world order. The second point is that we're part of it. We're not bystanders. We all have to feel part of it, because ultimately it's a war of good over evil. And I'm not suggesting that all of Iran is evil. I would say most of its citizens want to live in peace like all of us want to live in peace. But there are individuals that have taken control and have shown they're fanatic and aggressive with their threats, with their words, and actually with their actions. I mean, who else is just lobbing missiles freely at civilian centers? It's not at military targets and so on. So you see right away where their intention. Imagine when they had nuclear weapons, God forbid. And it's not just Israel again. And I want to repeat again, the world recognizes and will recognize the debt of gratitude, the tremendous debt. In World War II, there were allies. England joined together with the United States, joined together with other allies that went to war against the Axis. Here, Israel is really all alone, with U.S. support, no question, in many ways. In many ways we may not even know fully on, even be aware of. But where's the rest of the world? But getting back to our point is we are all part of it. We all have to mobilize ourselves in the spiritual dimension of the war. And that's why it's important to understand its biblical proportions. That's why it's important to understand its context, its historical context. Because these are battles that go back to ideological, theological ones about how to make peace between God and this world. That's what Abraham, the father of all nations, instituted. And he taught it to his children, the children that would become the ancestors, Ishmael, namely, of the Arab Muslim world. There's children that would become the ancestors of the Jewish world, and the children that would become, that's Jacob and Isaac and Jacob, and then Esau, the father of Rome, the grandfather of Rome, that would become the ancestor of the Roman Christian Western civilization. And we are now seeing the convergence of all these dots in history coming together. And as I already shared, I remember 10 days ago when after going to the wall, the Western Wall, which was a remnant that was left by whom? By the Roman Empire when they destroyed the Second Temple. And then we went into the tunnels, Prime Minister Netanyahu together with President Milei, myself and a few individuals. President Milei, a country from the Western Roman Christian world. Prime Minister Netanyahu, of course, Israel. And we're witnessing the remnants of the First Temple and the Second Temple. And then hours later, Operation Rising Lion is launched. Now we're 10 days later. Netanyahu is coming back to say thank you at the wall. That's shown as the lion has risen. The United States is taking its part. So we are at the threshold of a really new era. What can we do? We have to follow what the prophecies say, to do everything in our part, to focus on and to fight for moral clarity. It's not ambiguous. It's not gray area. There's right and there's wrong. There's no problem with diversity. There's no problem with different nations and different cultures, whether it's the Arab Muslim world, whether it's the Christian world, the Roman Western world, or the Jewish world. But they all have to converge and relate to one higher truth, which is one God. And that is exactly what we're fighting for. We're not fighting to destroy anyone. We're fighting to establish that type of moral clarity. So each of us in our own personal lives has to commit to this war, has to do everything possible in our personal lives, our family lives, our communities, the people around us, to create tremendous unity, to create tremendous virtue, to show that light is stronger than darkness. Light dispels darkness. Life is more important than death, and that we're all children of God, and we're all children of Abraham, the father of all nations, a man who taught love, a man who taught us to pray for infidels, a man who taught us that as difficult as the dichotomy may be between the material world and the spiritual world, between material existence and the divine, we have to learn the way of joining them together, not to destroy one destroying the other. That is the ultimate path. And that's the path that was taught at Sinai. That Sinai was presented then to all the nations of the world, especially the children of Ishmael, the children of Esau. At the time, they weren't really ready to embrace it, but ultimately they will embrace it, and they have embraced it already with the birth of Christianity and then the birth of Islam. Its basic principles are virtue, but there are growing pains, just as Christianity had to go through its so-called market correction. Instead of being violent, aggressive, imposing, to be loving and kind and just, and recognizing that all people are created equal, so too the world of the Arab Muslim world has to go through its growing pains. And ultimately we will arrive, as the prophets conclude, at the conclusion, the elimination, eradication of all evil, and then a world filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea, where the swords will be turned into plowshares, and ammunition and weapons will be turned into pruning hooks. There will be no longer war. There will be no longer evil and destruction, because the world will be filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. And all nations of the world will worship one divine God, that is greater than us all, and discover the harmony within our diversity. We are on the verge of it, but we have to play a role in making sure we emphasize this message, that in addition to the military battles that have to be fought, there's the spiritual battle, that clarity, and that has to be achieved by each one of us, no matter where we are in the world. I'm presently in Brazil sharing this message. I'll be coming back to the United States. So whether you're in Israel, or whether you're in Brazil, or whether you're in Australia, or whether you're in Europe, or whether you're in Russia, or whether you are in the Middle East, wherever you may be in the world, we all are part of this role. 8 billion people of us were given a mission to transform this world and make it into a home for the divine. May it be immediately. May we no longer see any more death of any innocent people. May the eradication of all negative forces, evil forces, peace in Israel, peace in the United States, peace in Iran and Persia, and peace in the entire world. Thank you so much. This has been Simon Jacobson. Please share this message if you find it meaningful. Love to hear your thoughts, feedbacks, and comments. Please subscribe to our offerings, especially the ones that are going to be coming out now. Special series all about Rising Lion, all about how each of us have to bring out the lion within us for the good that counteracts the negative lions of aggression around us. And may we see again world peace. And it's very clear that it can all happen very naturally, immediately in our time. Everyone be blessed and be well. And may we only share good news with each other. Thank you.